Bishops denying healthcare. Welcome to this week's FFRF Ask an Atheist. I'm Dan Barker. I'm co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is based in Madison, Wisconsin. How much actual power do U.S. Catholic bishops have? Apparently more than we realize, and many of us would say more than they should. Today we're talking about bishops denying affirming healthcare. And with us in the studio today is a man whose family is a victim of that power. And also joining me today is Kat Grant, Equal Justice Works Legal Fellow at FFRF.
So this show is called Ask an Atheist, which means that if you have a question today during the live show, you can ask it in the Facebook comments or send an email to askanatheist@ffrf.org.
So our guest today is Dave Heide. Did I say that right, Heide? Heide. And very well-known, very popular chef here in the Madison, Wisconsin area. And Dave is the executive chef and owner of Ollie's Restaurant and St. Charles Station. He's also the founder of Little John's, which is a not-for-profit pay-as-you-go restaurant.
Dave has been featured on NBC 15 Isthmus Card to Table. He and his wife Tiffany have 3 children, Ollie, Charlie, and John.
So welcome to Ask an Atheist.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
So we go back a ways. You and I met at least a decade ago or more.
More. I think like 12 years ago now.
Because at your restaurant, you sometimes have been hosting live jazz music.
That is true.
And once in a while, I get to play in with the band, so I've seen you there. You're a very popular chef. And then I met Ollie, who we're going to be talking about today, at the restaurant.
Yep.
So...
and Ollie loved your book, by the way, your kids' book that you've written. So we even got, Ollie got a signature from you from it at one point and was super proud. It's one of his favorite possessions.
Yeah, I remember that one day Ollie came up and and had I think it was the Maybe Yes, Maybe No book that Ollie was reading. So Ollie had a different name, and the restaurant had a different name back then. And you changed the name of the restaurant when Ollie changed. What did he say? His name, their name, her name, or whatever.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. Why did that happen?
Yeah. So we opened the restaurant on Ollie's first birthday, and the restaurant went by a different name. But we opened on the first birthday, and then about 3 years ago, Ollie came out as non-binary. And 2 years ago, Ollie came out as Ollie. And then a year and a half ago, Ollie legally changed his name to Ollie. And it felt kind of crappy to have his dead name plastered everywhere. And every time I'd get recognition for something or go on an interview, it was his dead name again and again and again. And
dead name, you said?
Yeah, dead name. So dead name is when you use the name that they used to use, right? So it's their given name or their birth name. But when they don't want to go by that name anymore, then it's called the dead name.
So let's not mention the former name of the restaurant.
You got it.
Let's just refer to Ollie's.
And it exists, and Ollie knows of the restaurant, of course. But, ever since Ollie came out as Ollie, that was at the beginning of high school. And so now most people don't know Ollie's birth name. And a lot of, even John, my youngest, doesn't know Ollie's birth name. So, when we talk about, that was the other thing that was happening is I was saying, I'm going to go down to the old restaurant. And John would be like, "Why is it called that?" And it just brings up a lot of stuff. So, so we rebranded. We also, COVID changed a lot of stuff with restaurants. How people ate, takeout, all of that kind of stuff changed. Habits were broken. It used to be that after work you'd go listen to some jazz and grab a drink with some buddies. But then for a year and a half we didn't do that, right? So those traditions broke, those habits broke.
Well, I would have come in if you'd had a keyboard there with a mask on. And,
Yeah, so we that was tough for live music too. We had so many of our musicians. I mean, we had music 7 days a week at the old restaurant, and so that was a huge change for us. But what we did is we actually, all my restaurants are named after my kids, right? So Ollie's is now really fast casual. We did all the food that our family loves to eat. So pizzas and smash burgers and pasta and family-friendly stuff. And then St. Charles Station, our other one, that just opened up 2 weeks ago, is great. It's all farm to table. We grow a bunch of our own product on site. We work with all local farms. It's fantastic.
So thinking a little bit more about this story, let's look at an excerpt of a recent story from WISC TV.
SSM Health isn't commenting on this story, so we've confirmed this information through a number of different sources. One of those people is a Madison teen who was planning a surgery on his journey to becoming his true self.
I'm 16. I go to West High School.
I met Ollie at his dad's restaurant with the same name, but that wasn't always the case. The name change was made after Ollie came out as transgender.
He got my help, and we made a restaurant that was like me, and he named it after me again.
Ollie says the restaurant's new identity has been critical as he experienced his own gender dysphoria.
There's just sort of a disappointment of seeing yourself in the mirror and it's just not you.
He and his parents decided to pursue gender-affirming surgery at SSM Health.
I had like a countdown on my phone. I was like counting down the days. I was so excited.
It was a day nearly 5 years in the making until
we went to my pre-op consultation, and as we were getting in the car to go over there, we got a phone call saying that it had been canceled.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops voted in June to start a process that would stop Catholic healthcare organizations from doing these kind of surgeries. We also contacted Madison Bishop Dan Heide. He couldn't interview, but sent us a 14-page guidance document passed by the Conference of Bishops in March, telling healthcare organizations to stop this kind of care.
So, wow, what a story. So how did you and your family feel that here's these religious leaders and somebody else's religion are interfering with your family's healthcare decisions?
I mean, I don't know how much I'm allowed to curse on here, so I'll just leave it. I'll leave it as so upset. And it's I think it's especially hard because it's one thing if you just out of the gate are like, we are a religious organization, we are not, we don't believe in this, and then we chose to pick that as our health care, right? But we didn't choose that as our health care. We chose a program that did have gender affirming care, that did work with it, that doctors, and I think the other thing that's hard is it pushes out so much onto the doctors as being bad doctors because they're not doing it, but all of the doctors still want to perform that surgery for Ellie. You've got a bishop telling a hospital group that they shouldn't allow something, and now all of a sudden the doctors have to follow suit.
And your family's not Catholic, right?
No. In fact, Ali came out as I say came out, but was pretty much always atheist. But I think at like 2.5 or 3 was like, I don't get it. This doesn't make sense. And we're like, well, I'm not going to try and explain it to you because I don't understand it either. But I think one of the things that's hard is like people like the bishop and people like that give also all of religion such a horrid name, right? And although I'm an atheist and although my family's an atheist, and I know you are, and I'm guessing most of the people watching this are, I think one of the things that's really tough is I also know wonderful people who do wonderful things with religion, right? And I don't personally have a problem with people having religion in their lives, right? But it's when you start pushing your religion on how it affects me and my family's healthcare, or the decisions about like who my kiddo's allowed to love, or about like what my family's allowed to do, like that is when I lose all compassion for the people trying to inflict that on me.
So, Kat, do we see a lot of stories like this with the Catholic, was it SSM Healthcare?
Yes. So SSM Healthcare is one of the largest Catholic hospital systems and Catholic healthcare systems. So they are actually based out of Missouri. They are not based in Wisconsin, but they control a large number of hospitals across the country. Wisconsin is actually one of the top 5 states for Catholic-controlled hospitals, with roughly 40% of healthcare systems in the state being run by Catholic hospital systems. There are a couple more states that are at 41%, and then the highest rate is actually in Alaska with 46%. But what we're seeing is a really, really rapid increase in Catholic control of the healthcare system specifically. So over the past 20 years, there has been a 50% increase when you are talking about not only hospitals, but urgent care centers, retail pharmacies, pretty much anywhere that you receive health care, even physician groups that may be like independent physicians that are, all branched together, and then also health insurance. So Dean Medical, like health insurance, they are through the SSM system, which is why we are now seeing Dane County here in Wisconsin investigating their contract, because the county employees get their health insurance through Dean, and that's Catholic insurance. They have said we will no longer, allow gender-affirming surgeries. A lot of this came to light because of Ali and your family. And so the county has said, whoa, hang on, wait a minute. That might be a violation of our contract, and we are going to make sure that gender-affirming care is a priority for future contracts. So we're starting to see this in the context of gender-affirming care, but it has been a big issue for a long time because Catholic hospitals historically have had very strict restrictions on reproductive care, end-of-life care, really any kind of major bodily autonomy issue. And those can be, you can find what those restrictions specifically are. They're called the Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Hospitals. And that is a document created by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. That is not a document created by the Vatican itself, but by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops specifically to govern Catholic hospitals.
Because they're much more conservative than
Yes.
Rome, right? They're the U.S.
Yes,
bishops.
which is really saying something. Like, it is not, you know, we're not saying that the Vatican is the most liberal institution on earth. It's really that the bar is so subterranean with the U.S. bishops that they don't even represent the Vatican. They certainly don't represent the majority of Catholics in the United States. And so, you know, you've got these hyper-conservative bishops who, most of whom have no medical training whatsoever, making these decisions, keeping women from getting abortions, keeping women from getting IUDs inserted. You know, that happens a lot when women give birth. They might elect to get an IUD inserted so that they have time between pregnancies to, you know, exist and have a tiny new baby, because that's terrifying. You know, all of these things, end-of-life care, you know, the Catholic Church has a very strict stance that life should be, you know, preserved for as long as naturally possible. So, you know, people with advanced directives can have their advanced directives violated and not followed on the basis of religious belief.
So, Dave, in your family's case, was it because you were with an insurance company that you had to use St. Mary's?
Yeah, so we are foster parents, and because of foster parents, we started fostering in 2020, and we had gotten our license before that, but it was because of our foster care. We were actually able to get onto Badger Care, and it probably would have only been for a short term, but then COVID happened, and then they pushed off renewal. So we were on Badger Care. That was our health care that we were on. So we didn't have a choice. Like, this was the health care option that we had, which was one of the reasons that made it so bad, is that you've got a publicly like approved in the state of Wisconsin procedure that's like from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Like every single organization says that gender affirming care is the right care to give to a child, and all of them say yes, including state, and it's a legal procedure. And now you've got a hospital denying, using public funds, denying it just because of religious purposes. And the worst part is that the hospital does have the right to refuse on religious standing. However, when they do that, if they're using the county insurance, if they do that, they're required to tell the patient that they're doing it because of religious reasons. And they never did.
So you were not informed?
We were never informed that it was because of religion. We were told it was like, there was a problem with some of the equipment, and there was like a backlog of some stuff, and they were going to put us on a waiting list. But like, that absolutely wasn't the case. SSM has not at any time put any of this into writing either, so they can have deniability. But there's this, but all of the doctors know. Like, you can talk to any doctor and they all know what's going on. Like, everybody knows. But SSM is doing a good job of trying to protect themselves by just continually lying. And they just, they picked the wrong family to do it to.
And I think you said that your doctor was just as upset as anyone else, right?
I would say absolutely just as upset. I mean, like, I think, you know, this is not just like I think a lot of people think of gender affirming care as just like, oh man, we're just trying to mutilate, like, this is the rights perspective, right? We're trying to mutilate teens and make it so they can never go back to this, and we're corrupting them and all of this. But, you know, Ali has been in therapy for 2 years, like, talking to a therapist about everything. Ali has been on testosterone now for 6 months. Ali has done every single thing that he was supposed to do. And with this relationship, his first consult with the surgeon was over a year ago. So it's been a year of planning, right? and a year of like relationship building with the surgical team and with the doctor. And Ali has 3 different doctors, therapist, a gender affirming care doctor, and primary care doctor, all of whom have signed off on saying there's the right course of action.
There's such a thing as a gender affirming care doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So things like, gender affirming care, also, I know a lot of people are like, they go right to the genitals, which like, I don't know why. Gender affirming care, Ali's not looking for bottom surgery or anything like that. Ali just wants to not have his breasts out, right? Like he just wants to be able to not have that, because that's where his dysphoria comes from. So dysphoria is, like body dysphoria is when the body that you are presenting isn't the body that you feel, right? So like if someone wants to present masculine, obviously having large breasts is a detraction from being able to present masculine.
But the body that I feel is a big, built up
burly,
person.
yeah, totally, absolutely, and you're nailing it. So like, then you don't have to have dysphoria. But I mean that happens with a lot of people too, right? Like I'm a big guy. I'm sure you can tell. It's camera, right? Like I'm a big guy. Like I would like to be a smaller
You love
guy,
your work,
right?
basically.
I would never trust a skinny chef. Like that's a true thing. But I will say, like, do I wish that I presented like 60 pounds lighter? Absolutely, right? Like, but I have that within my power to change that, right? Like if I really wanted to, if I really felt like it was more important to be skinnier than to try and enjoy food, like I could do that. With Ali doesn't have that opportunity to change that. Like if you wanted to be more ripped, you and I could hit the gym, like every day. We could lift weights. I could be your spotter.
Saturday morning.
Saturday, done.
Right.
No, every day, man. Every day we got to hit the weights, protein shakes. You could do it, Dan, right? So those are things that you can change and you have the ability to change, right? So your dysphoria around that is really just like, I need to change a lifestyle or something like that. With Ali, no matter what amount of work, exercise, anything that he does, those things are not going away.
And if I can just add, I think people always think, well, with teenagers especially and with young kids, first of all, these surgeries do not happen for, very young children. No. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But also the non-surgical options can be really dangerous. I know as a teenager, when, I was around Ollie's age and a little younger, there was very little information available about safe binding, which a binder, for those of you who may not know, is basically a compression garment that goes over your chest. And I used to have very, very severe asthma attacks, and I did a lot of really bad damage to my ribs from chest binding because I was doing it unsafely. I had a cheap, poorly made clasp binder from Amazon because that's what I knew about and that's what I had access to. But even when you do bind properly and you do bind safely, that can have really serious long-term impacts. It can damage your spine, it can damage your ribs, it can damage your chest, and it can also hurt your ability to get top surgery in the future if you do it for a very long time. So, I think when those considerations about surgery are made and people are like, even if they're like, okay, well, why don't you just wear a binder? That can cause a lot of serious health issues, and it a lot of times pushes especially young kids who maybe, don't have the best impulse control or just, I would forget I was wearing my binder and fall asleep with it on, which is a huge no-no. This provides options that keep them from actually getting very, very serious long-term health problems.
I want to ask both of you, either of you, a lot of people on the religious right say that being trans is just a matter of choice. What would you say about that?
Again, back to the cursing. If I may. I want to answer that, but I also want to just add, one more thing when it comes to top surgery, right? Like, none of these people have any problem with 16-year-olds getting their breasts enlarged, right? Like, if a woman wants to feel more feminine, like, oh my God, let her get implants. Like, let her do that. Like, she just wants to express herself. That's okay.
Or
but
a
like
cis boy
doing a
with
reduction,
gynecomastia who gets
absolutely.
top surgery, essentially.
Like, all of those are okay, but it's really like, when you're specifying like this person can't feel like who they really are on the inside, that is what pisses me off. So to answer your question now about the
choice,
like the thing about the whole, like, is it a choice? Like, I mean, Ali has never really identified, like, I think originally when Ali came out, he came out as non-binary, right? Which is under the trans flag. So there's trans, and then under trans, there's non-binary, there's, trans, there's a whole bunch of different things underneath that flag. And I don't want to speak to it because I'm not in that, I'm not in that group. and I don't want to get it wrong. But you know, what I would say is like Ali has always been Ali. Like even though there are pictures of Ali in a dress when they're younger or with longer hair. Like,
well, that's when I met Ali.
Yeah, that's
right?
when you met Ali. But and you know, but I think though a lot of that is like what we put on people, right? Like Ali was born female, and so we were like, oh, like we're going to surround Ali with dresses and princess movies and all this stuff. And although Ali did get into The Little Mermaid for a while, Ali was never like, my role is going to be a homemaker mother princess, right? Like Ali was always like, oh no, like I do like art, I do like some feminine things, but that like I don't see myself fitting into like a Barbie, right? And I don't see myself fitting into a Ken per se. Like I'm me, and that's who I am. And I think a lot of this is also based on just like how we were raised, right? Like we were raised as like you are only two categories, and so we all try to cram ourselves into these two boxes. But I think everything is a spectrum, and it's really weird to me. I think the best description I had was from someone who is non-binary, and this was when I was first kind of like learning, because it's always a learning experience. You always learn more, right? And he was like, "Don't you think it's kind of weird that we have to talk about each other by guessing what's in each other's pants?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Like, how come I have to be like, hey, he is going, or she, you know, like that's
But Ali
weird.
did change pronouns from she to he, right? Which was a
so
deliberate.
originally to they and then to he. So it was a transition there too. And I think a lot of that is like trying to find out who you are.
So what are the statistics? You go by they,
Yes.
right? And so others would switch to he or she. Is that
Yes, it completely depends. So, you know, I identify as non-binary. I identify as like, if you really want to get into the specifics of labels, you know, agender is kind of the one that I stick to because I don't feel attached to any particular gender. I just kind of float around and like take the bits and pieces that I like. But, you know, some people identify as binary trans. So, you know, that would be someone who completely identifies as trans to the other side of the spectrum. I think considering it a linear spectrum is kind of difficult to do, and this is all like complicated, wibbly wobbly. I describe gender as goo, and you just kind of shape the goo however you want. But you know,
well, the Bible shapes it as male and
Yep.
female. The Bible says there's just the two.
Well, and I think another thing to look at though too is I think that there's a really difficult time for people to separate out gender and sex.
Yes.
Right, and those are two, and sexuality. Like those three things are very different things, right? So, like when people talk about Ali and like you know him transitioning to male, they think of it as like the sexuality part, right? Or the sex part, like of the and sex is like the organs, right? That's
Yes.
how you're born with your organs. But gender is the construct, right? That's the social construct that says like, hey, if you want to be a female, to be female, you wear dresses, you know, you have a homemaker background or like some sort of, like it's all the stereotypes you put on the female gender. Or if you're male, you like race cars and dinosaurs and army figures. Like if you want to see what the gender construct is, go to Target, right?
Yeah.
There's the boys section and the girls section. And the things in the girls sections are things that girls should like. And the things that are in the boys section are things that boys would like. Like my favorite way to identify or like to kind of explain like the gender thing is like, I don't know if you've ever seen this. I know this seems out of place, but there's this Lego ad from like the 1990s, and it's awesome because it shows a girl, but she's just playing with Legos. Like there's nothing telling her like what she has to build or anything. It's just like a bunch of different random colors, and it's just like, why do we have to tell people? And then Lego changed it all and put the whole like girl series and boy series, right? But
you had Elo and Bionicle, and
Right.
those were the two genders.
But like you know now like that's one of the things I love people to be able to express like who they are. Like why do we have to tell them that they have to be in a specific box? Like John, my youngest, he's 6. It's a very different time to bring him up. It's wonderful. Like he had long hair for a long time and he loved wearing like pastel colors. He likes leggings that are like tight, and those are all girl clothes, right?
Supposedly, yeah.
Supposedly, right? But that's what he likes. Like, why am I telling him you can't like this, you have to like this?
Yeah.
It's all because of a gender construct that we created as a society to put people in specific roles.
A cultural polarizing kind of.
Absolutely,
Which is,
you know, and the worst part about that is that it doesn't leave room for gray. anyone who doesn't fit into those two exact boxes is outcast.
Well, the
right?
Bible says that it's an abomination to be gay, right? And their blood shall be upon them. And look at the damage that kind of teaching has caused.
And I think it's also important to note, I know that we're running close to starting on questions soon, but I think it's also important to note that trans people, gender nonconforming people, gender expansive people, we have existed for all of human history. In fact, like, the idea even that Christianity, you know, wouldn't have recognized gender expansive people really is a construct of the Roman Empire. You know, that is a construct of imperialism and the use of Christianity being used to become a colonialist, imperialistic state religion. You know, the ancient Israelites and Jews around the time of Jesus Christ, you know, around that period, you know, recognized roughly 6 genders. You know, it is a extremely culturally specific, extremely diverse experience that this idea of a gender binary really is this way to control minority groups and to establish power structures that historically have not actually existed. You know, I cannot emphasize enough, you look in any culture, pre-Christianity, pre-Roman Christianity specifically, you will find a massive amount of gender diversity. A lot of that information has been lost historically, in part because, you know, that's how colonialism works. You decide what history makes it forward and what gets pushed forward. You also see, you know, gender-affirming surgeries in the modern context are not new. The earliest gender-affirming surgeries happened over 100 years ago. A lot of that research, however, was being done in Germany. And when the Nazis took over in Germany, because strict adherence to gender roles is a key part of fascism, like that's textbook, you know, political science 101, they literally burned decades and decades of incredible research that have set us back tremendously. And that is why it seems like so much of this is so new, but we've existed forever, and these treatments are not this brand new thing, even if people think that they are.
So it's the power of patriarchal control, really,
Right.
is what this is.
I would also add to that, though, I think one of the beautiful things, so there are a lot of horrible things about social media, there are a lot of horrible things that can happen, but one of the beautiful things is, you know, like, I think people see, like, there's a rise of, like, the trans wave, and all these people are now becoming trans because they see it, and then, but what's really happening is it's just like what happened with LGBTQ, just originally, like I remember I graduated in 1998 from West High School, words like, you know, fag were thrown out all the time, like these horrible words, right? Like, oh, you're so gay, and like that was just like common language then. And like for a boy, you know, I think there was a lot of like, they were called like lipstick lesbians in high school, right?
Yeah.
Like it was okay to be a lesbian as long as you were like a cute lesbian, because guys like to picture 2 girls kissing, so that was okay. But like a lot of guys really struggled, like because they would get made fun of and bullied and pushed around, even at a pretty liberal high school. Like West was a big theater program. But then what happened is like more and more people got to see that it was okay to be gay. And so it wasn't that all of a sudden people became more gay. It was that now I don't have to hide who I am.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing that a lot more with trans, where it's like, oh my God, I don't have to fit in this bucket. Like I don't have to be like a shitty guy, and I don't have to be a crappy girl. Like I can just be me. Like that to me is so much more beautiful than like, oh my God, look at me, I fit into this perfect bucket defined by our social construct of like, I am a pure man or I am a pure woman. Like, I'm just me is, I think, one of the most beautiful things. And
So
I think
it makes you realize there must have been a lot of really miserable people in history who could not be.
Absolutely.
Open.
yeah, well, think about how many like men married women because that's what they had to do, but were really
Or
gay their entire
women
lives.
were forced. Women were forced to marry. So
My
when you-
uncle, in fact, I'm sorry, really quick. In my family, we actually had 2 people who lived together my entire life who were roommates, you know, and like it wasn't until both of them had passed that I found out from my family that they were
Just
a
good
couple together,
friends.
and they just had to like, you know, and it's like, but that though, right? So many people have had to live with that, and I think that's what you're seeing now with trans, is that with social media, with it being accepted now, that you see like a pride section at Target, that it's become like the public actually favors support of LGBTQIA, and I think you saw that when the Equality Act got passed, right? That like now you've got a majority of Americans who are in favor of equal rights for all. Now it's like, oh, cool, like you get all the during Pride Month, you get all these corporate people jumping on and every logo becomes rainbow, right? And I think with that and the acceptance and knowing that like people are there and hear you and understand you and love you has had more kids be able to say like, oh, okay, I don't have to be afraid to be me.
So we could talk about this forever. We got to take some questions. But first, and I think this is actually one of the questions, what's happening? Is Ollie getting the surgery?
Yep. So thanks to, oh my God, so many people out there. So many people, including you guys, including, oh my God, so many people, ABC Health, Congressman Mark Pocan, Senator Tammy Baldwin, Governor Evers' office. I mean, we talked to everyone that we knew about this, not for Ollie, right? But one of the things Ollie talked about was, like, it's okay, we'll get the surgery. Like, we have enough resources that no matter what, even if we have to drive to Illinois, like, Ollie will get the surgery, right? But for Ollie, it was like, you know, what about all the kids who don't have Chef Dave as a dad, right? Like, what about all the kids who don't have two supporting parents and already it was a struggle to convince them to even talk to a gender-affirming care doctor, right? So our whole mission was like, yes, it's great to get Ollie and use Ollie's platform as a way to like get the word out, but we knew Ollie would get surgery eventually. So it has been rescheduled. We're going to be doing it at a different hospital, obviously, because SSM isn't doing it. And it's scheduled in September. The problem is, though, that didn't fix anything except for the fact that Ollie's going to get his surgery because we had originally scheduled it at the beginning of summer so that Ollie could recover, because it is a very invasive procedure. It takes about a month.
And you canceled your vacations and everything?
We canceled multiple vacations. Ollie had all these camps that he was going to go to, but they were all full by the time the surgery got canceled. So he couldn't do. So he basically has had to spend his entire summer just at home. And so he lost out on the summer. We lost out on our summer. He's going to miss out on school that he's going to have to do virtual. He's going to miss out on being with friends and hang out with them, on the theater program that he's super excited about, because he's going to miss out on a month of being able to be a part, so it means he won't be able to be a part of the school play. Like, there are all these things now that because of someone's shitty opinion, now Ollie is having to completely change his entire school. And junior year is a big year, you know, like that's the kind of the final year of like getting your grades up high enough so you can, you know, apply to all the colleges you want to and all that. And he's missing a month of it now. Wow.
So are you going to take any kind of legal action, or are you free to talk about that?
I can say yes, we are.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it at that. So we are absolutely taking legal action, and a majority of that legal action is because of the fact that we were on Badger Care at the time. So it's okay for, and because of the fact that SSM lied about why they were terming Ollie's care. So. And anyway, there's a lot of stuff. I can't go into all of it, but like, we're not doing legal action for any kind of monetary anything. Like, we don't care about the money part. We're doing it just to make sure that places can't bully people.
Well, because your restaurants are so popular, you're probably, that's why you have so many friends, I think.
That's why it is.
Mark Pocan and Tammy Baldwin, they probably always go out
well, actually, I'll share a funny story with you. So I've actually known Mark Pocan since I was 1 year old.
He's a representative in U.S. House.
A congressman, yep. Yeah. So he's a congressman, and I will show you my favorite thing in the entire world. So this is a picture of Mark Pocan at my first birthday party. So here you go. We'll just show that. So that's Mark Pocan. Mark, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for sharing this picture. But that's Mark Pocan at my first birthday party at my grandma's house, who's a children's book author, and he was doing magic tricks. That's why the fancy tux, to pay his way through college. So I've known him since forever. He's a wonderful person and a dear friend. And then Tammy Baldwin has been a huge champion. Senator Tammy Baldwin has been a huge champion for our nonprofit Little John's. She helped get a $500,000 earmark to help us build out. Wow. So our nonprofit, for those of you who don't know, we have a nonprofit Little John's where we take grocery and farm excess. We train veterans and people who've been incarcerated how to cook with that excess, and then we put that food out into the community. And we're fundraising right now for our future home, and our future home will be able to do over 200,000 meals a week out into the community.
It's a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit,
wow.
Yeah. Very non-profitable, by the way. If you ever want to make the least amount of profit, open a nonprofit.
I used to preach that if you didn't believe in God, you couldn't be a good, moral, caring person. How does that work?
Actually, can I tell you something funny? So I got a text from a dear friend of mine. It was his birthday recently, and he's very Christian. And I had called him on his birthday to sing happy birthday to him, because that's what I do for my dear friends. I don't sing for anyone, but just my friends. And he texted me. He said, "Hey, I owe you a major apology and a thank you. I was out of town for my birthday, so my reception was horrible. When I got back to civilization and heard your message, I was heartwarmed by your lovely birthday song. You're a lovely, kind soul, and I'm blessed to have you as a friend. Thank you for being you. I still, to this day, feel you are the most Christ-like non-Christian I know. Maybe one day we'll make a believer out of you." Nope. But for now, I'm just happy to be able to call you a friend. So, like, I think there's this, like, I get people all the time who will say the same thing. Like, why are you doing this? Like, you know, like, and I'm like, well, why are you really saying that the only reason you don't murder people and you want to help feed people and you want to take care of people is from fear of God? Like, to me, that's way more effed up. Like, I have a lot more gratitude and happiness and thankfulness for people in my lives who do things because it's just the right thing to do, because they have their own moral compass.
Rather than avoiding hell or the promise of heaven, they're doing it because
it's the right thing.
We love human beings,
Yep. Well, I think that, so I do what I do because I like to make people happy. Like, that's what brings me joy in life. So I do cooking because I can make people happy with my food. I tell stories and jokes because I can make people happy. And so everything I do is around creating happiness for others, even at the expense of my own family.
Here's a question from a viewer. Sometimes an assigned boy who identifies as a boy will have hormones that cause breasts. Does the bishop want to ban surgery for those boys? You talked about that, didn't you?
Right. So, no. The bishops don't want to ban that because they view that, and if you read that doctrinal note, which was that 14-page document that was in the news clip, which I have read multiple times at this point, unfortunately, but it talks about, like, the natural order of the body, and a lot of this is based on Pope John Paul II's, theology of the body and what is natural and what, the differences between men and women in the natural order of things are. A lot of this goes back to, like, Thomas Aquinas and all this stuff. And truly, I could yell forever about how awful the theology of the body is. But, they have no issue with that because that is bringing this, boy's body in line with his natural
bringing
role.
it back to...
Yes.
So having the breast is a little bit out of order.
Right.
And so...
Yeah, they view that as a legitimate enough medical condition, whereas they view gender dysphoria as something where what you should be fixing is, their idea of fixing gender dysphoria is to bring the mind back in line with the body and not the body in line with the mind.
So if
which
that's
totally
the difference.
works, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
totally works.
completely.
Yeah.
If Ollie had not announced being trans, would the operation have gone ahead? Do you think?
So we could have done it as a breast reduction surgery because that is
For a
legal.
female.
Yeah, for a female. But no, we're not going to change that and let someone get away with the shitty procedure. But also, so like another thing is, without getting into too much detail, like there are also things like nipples. So like when you do gender affirming care, if you do a breast reduction, they are required to put the nipple back on, right? But there are horrible health things with reattaching nipples. Like they can literally just like fall off and they can lead to a lot of like horrible things. So Ali doesn't want them. Like Ali, he wants to get like some cool tattoos someday there, right? But like he doesn't want to have the nipples reattached. So it would not be counted as a breast reduction because to do that, you are required to have them put a nipple back on.
Yeah.
And there's some really bad health
I've been in many
things.
a group chat with people who are either debating whether or not to have the nipples reattached, or they did do it and then they're like, oh God, what is happening?
Yeah, because they don't always look the same, especially if you have, I don't want to go into too much detail and embarrass Ali, but especially if you have larger breasts. Like when you do the reduction, things are not in the right place in lineup, so you have to like detach them completely and reattach them someplace else.
It's very weird to even think about, just even in the abstract.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so besides the fact that you are thinking about legal action, here's a question. Is there anything we can do to force religious hospitals to provide such care? Can we lobby our representatives, or are we just destined to allow this religious discrimination?
So I will, I can say my viewpoint on that. I think the only way to get them to change is with money. Like, these hospitals are not-for-profit organizations. They make crap tons of money, and a lot of that money comes from county, state, federal contracts. It comes from, and I will also say, like, I knew kind of a tiny bit that SSM was a religious background, but when we picked our healthcare, they weren't doing anything that was other than like, you have a little bit more, like if you want a vasectomy, there are like different clinics you can use. Like we knew there were some little bits, but nothing that would really take away from the healthcare of my family or my kids, right? And we didn't know about any of this. We didn't know that they were making like choices for other people's bodies. We didn't know how religious the organization really was. We knew that when we had our other two kids, so Charlie and John were both born at St. Mary's. Ollie was born at Meriter. Which is actually fun because now Ollie gets to have top surgery at Meriter too because they're a better hospital. But you know, when we had our two younger boys at St. Mary's, there was a crucifix in each room, but that was really the extent. We didn't have like, you know, doctors saying a prayer during surgery or, you know, there was nothing else pushed. There wasn't like, hey, before you sit down on that bed, we should read some scripture together. There was none of that, right? So like it didn't seem like it was impactful. I think the biggest thing we can do as an organization or as individuals is get the word out of who these people are. Let people know what their money is going to, that like when you pick between, you know, any one of the 13 different, HSAs or like whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield or any of the UW Health or any of the different programs, if you know that one of them might be $10 more a month, but it's not shitty, then like maybe you can choose that as where you pick your health insurance from. So I think the more people know, the more they can vote with their dollar, and that's where you can really hurt them to a point where like maybe they're not changing for the right reason, right? But they'll at least change to make healthcare accessible for more people.
Well, thank you, Dave, for coming on the show today.
Of course,
it's really been,
so
and
happy.
Thank you too, Kat.
Yeah, of course. Always happy to be here.
I was going to say that we're going to have to keep abreast of this situation, but let's say it. We're going to have to keep an eye
We'll
on
keep
the
a chest of the situation.
Yes,
That'll be good. That'll be good.
and watch what happens, and we'll be watching your story very much. Dave Heide, very well-known, respected chef here in the Madison, Wisconsin area. With Ollie's Restaurant, and what's the other one called?
St. Charles Station. So those are two restaurants that are for-profit restaurants, and then we have Little John's are not-for-profit.
So Ollie's, and maybe someday you'll bring back the live jazz?
Yes, in fact, we're going to be doing it as special occasion live music. So right now in the St. Charles side, we're open Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, but we're going to hopefully be bringing back special like music events and whatnot on Friday nights. So
this concludes Ask an Atheist for this week. Next week, we'll be talking with Mohammed Hisham. He's an Egyptian atheist who was kicked off of national television for questioning religion, and he had to flee the country. And then don't miss Free Thought Radio. This week, Annie Laurie and I will be speaking with Stanford professor Lerone A. Martin, author of the new book, The Gospel of J. Edgar Hoover, How the FBI Aided and Abetted the Rise of White Christian Nationalism. You can listen to Free Thought Radio at ffrf.org/radio or wherever you find podcasts. If you want more information about FFRF, check out our website at ffrf.org and subscribe to our email list or donate. If you've done that already, thank you. If not, please join us. We'll see you next week.